The massive arena on Korthak Prime had seen death before, but never like this. Blood stained the silver metal floors in dark patterns that the cleaning crews could never quite remove. The smell of fear and violence hung in the recycled air like a curse that would not lift. In the center of the arena stood the reason for all this carnage. The Valdris moved with deadly grace across the fighting ground. Its body looked like living crystal, sharp and clear as broken glass. Each of its 6 arms ended in claws that could cut through battle armor like paper. The creature stood 12 feet tall, and when it moved, the light caught its crystalline skin and threw rainbow colors across the arena walls. The Valdris had not always been a killer for sport. Once it had lived on a distant world where crystal forests grew like twisted cathedrals. But the Korthak Empire had other plans. They captured the creature and brought it here, to their greatest arena, where beings from across the galaxy came to prove their worth in combat. What made the Valdris so deadly was not just its size or its razor-sharp claws. The creature could reach into minds. It could sense fear, read attack patterns before they happened, and turn an opponent's own thoughts against them. Many warriors had entered the arena confident in their skills, only to find their minds clouded with terror as the Valdris approached. The list of the dead read like a catalog of the galaxy's finest warriors. Zentaurian battle lords whose people had conquered 3 star systems through pure military might had fallen in seconds. Their energy shields meant nothing when the Valdris could predict exactly where they would move. Krugian berserkers, who knew no fear and felt no pain, had lasted longer but died just as surely. Their massive bodies and incredible strength could not match the Valdris's speed and mental abilities. The creature had torn through them like they were made of paper. Even the legendary Phantom Guards of Nexus 7 had tried their luck. These elite soldiers could bend light around their bodies and become nearly invisible. They moved like shadows and struck like lightning, but the Valdris did not need to see them to know where they were. It felt their minds, tracked their thoughts, and killed them before they could land a single blow. The crowds loved it. Beings from hundreds of worlds gathered in the arena's viewing sections, cheering as their champions fell. They bet enormous sums on how long each warrior would last. The longest fight had been 8 minutes. Most ended in less than 1. The Korthak Empire made vast profits from these fights. They sold broadcasting rights across the galaxy. Entire civilizations would stop their daily business to watch the next challenger face the Valdris. Food vendors and gambling houses built fortunes on the spectacle of death. But finding new challengers had become harder and harder. Word of the Valdris spread through every corner of known space. Proud warrior cultures that had never backed down from any fight now refused to send their best soldiers to certain death. The creature's reputation grew with each victory, and each victory made the next challenger harder to find. Some species tried sending criminals or volunteers with nothing to lose. Others offered massive rewards to anyone brave or foolish enough to enter the arena. A few civilizations even tried to build mechanical warriors, thinking machines might resist the Valdris's mental attacks. None of it worked. The crystal creature adapted to every strategy, overcame every defense, and added each new corpse to its growing count. The arena officials had grown worried. Without fresh challengers, the crowds would lose interest. The profits would drop. The Korthak Empire demanded constant entertainment, and the Valdris had become too successful for its own good. They needed something new, something different. They needed a warrior who could give the creature a real fight. Deep in the arena's holding areas, the Valdris waited in its crystal chamber. The creature did not understand concepts like entertainment or profit. It only knew that beings came to fight it, and it killed them. Each victory felt hollow, but the creature had no choice. The Korthak had trained it well. Fight or face punishment worse than death. The creature's mind could sense the fear in the air throughout the station. Lesser beings avoided the arena levels when possible. Even the guards walked carefully near its chamber, their thoughts loud with terror and respect. The Valdris had become more than a fighter. It had become a force of nature, a living symbol of death that could not be stopped. In the viewing boxes above the arena, Korthak nobles discussed the problem. They needed to find someone desperate enough or confident enough to face their champion. The galaxy was running out of volunteers, and forcing unwilling fighters into the arena would create political problems they wanted to avoid. Some suggested offering larger prizes. Others thought they should find a way to make the fights more fair, perhaps by giving challengers better weapons or armor. But the Korthak Empire had built its reputation on the Valdris's dominance. Making the fights easier would reduce the spectacle and hurt their profits. The creature itself showed no signs of age or wear. Its crystalline body seemed to grow stronger with each victory. The Valdris ate little and slept rarely. It spent most of its time standing motionless in its chamber, waiting for the next challenger to arrive. Sometimes it would practice fighting moves against the air, its claws cutting precise patterns that would soon be written in someone's blood. The arena's medical staff had long since given up trying to save the challengers. They learned to work quickly to remove bodies and clean the fighting ground before the next match. Some of them had nightmares about the things they had seen. Others simply did their jobs and tried not to think about it. Security around the Valdris was tight, but not because anyone feared it would escape. The creature showed no interest in leaving its chamber or fighting anyone except official challengers. The guards were there to protect visitors from accidentally getting too close to something that could kill them without effort. Tour groups sometimes came to see the famous arena, though they were kept far from the actual fighting area. Guides would tell stories about the greatest battles, about warriors who had lasted more than a few minutes against the unstoppable Valdris. These stories grew larger with each telling, but they all ended the same way. The creature's chamber had cameras watching at all times. Scientists studied its behavior, looking for weaknesses or patterns that might help future challengers. They found nothing useful. The Valdris was simply too perfect a killer, too adapted to the arena environment. It had become exactly what the Korthak Empire wanted when they first captured it. As days passed into weeks, the arena officials grew more desperate. They sent messages to the farthest corners of the galaxy, offering rewards that grew larger each time. They contacted warrior academies, mercenary guilds, and military organizations. Most did not even reply. Those who did sent polite refusals or demands for payment so large that even the wealthy Korthak Empire hesitated. The Valdris waited in its chamber, patient as stone, deadly as poison. Somewhere in the galaxy, its next challenger was preparing to arrive. The creature could not know that this next opponent would be unlike anything it had ever faced. It could not know that everything was about to change. The arena's blood-stained floors would soon see their strangest battle yet. The transport ship looked nothing like the sleek war vessels that usually approached Korthak Prime. It was small, battered, and painted in colors that had faded from years of travel through space. The ship's design was simple and practical, built for long journeys rather than impressive appearances. When it requested permission to dock, the station controllers barely glanced at their screens. Humans were not considered important in galactic society. Their homeworld of Earth sat far from the major trade routes and political centers. Most aliens knew little about them except that they were soft, short-lived, and seemed to form emotional attachments to almost anything. They had no great military might, no advanced technology that others wanted, and no resources worth fighting over. The docking request came through standard diplomatic channels. The ship's captain claimed to represent something called the Earth Cultural Exchange Program. She wanted to meet with Korthak officials to discuss sharing human art, music, and customs with other species. It was the sort of harmless request that busy officials approved without much thought. Captain Sarah Chen stepped off her ship onto the docking platform with calm confidence. She looked like most humans, average height by galactic standards, with brown hair tied back in a simple style and clothes that were clean but not fancy. Nothing about her suggested she was anything more than another minor diplomat from a minor world. But it was her companion that made the alien worker stop and stare, walking. Beside Sarah on four legs was a small creature covered in orange and white fur. It had pointed ears, bright green eyes, and a long tail that swished back and forth as it moved. The creature weighed perhaps 10 pounds and stood barely a foot tall. To most aliens, it looked completely harmless. "What is that thing?" asked a Korthak security guard, pointing at the small animal. "This is Whiskers," Sarah said with a smile. "He's my cat." The word meant nothing to the aliens. They had translator devices that could handle most languages, but some concepts did not translate well between species. The closest their systems could manage was small companion animal or domesticated creature. "It is very small," observed a station administrator who had come to greet the human diplomat. "Is it some kind of food animal?" Sarah's smile became strained. "No, definitely not food. Whiskers is my pet. Humans keep cats as companions. They live in our homes with us. This explanation only confused the aliens more. Why would an intelligent species share their living space with a creature that served no obvious purpose? The animal was too small to be useful for work or war. It did not appear to have any special abilities. It just walked along beside the human, occasionally stopping to sniff at interesting smells. As they made their way through the station corridors, Whiskers drew attention from every alien they passed. Some laughed at the tiny creature. Others seemed puzzled by its presence. A few actually seemed nervous, though they could not explain why. There was something about the way the small animal moved that felt different from other harmless creatures they had seen. Whiskers walked with perfect balance and absolute silence. His green eyes tracked every movement around him with laser focus. When a maintenance robot rolled past making loud noises, the cat did not startle or run. Instead, he simply watched it with calm interest, as if evaluating whether it might be worth hunting. "Your pet seems very alert," commented the station administrator as they rode an elevator to the diplomatic levels. "Cats are natural hunters," Sarah explained. "They have excellent reflexes and senses. Humans have been companions with cats for thousands of years." "Hunters?" The administrator looked down at the small furry creature with new interest. "What does it hunt?" "Oh, small things mostly. Mice, birds, insects. Nothing dangerous." This seemed to relax the aliens somewhat. A creature that hunted insects could hardly be a threat to anyone important. They continued their journey through the station, with Whiskers padding silently along beside them. The cat showed no fear of the strange environment or the towering alien beings around him. He seemed curious about everything, but in a calm, controlled way. When they passed through a crowded market area, Whiskers navigated between the legs of various species without getting stepped on or lost. He stayed close to Sarah but did not seem dependent on her for protection. Several alien children pointed at the cat and made excited noises. Their parents quickly pulled them away, not because they feared the small creature, but because they did not want to bother the human diplomat. Whiskers watched the children with interest but made no move to approach them. "Is it trained for specific tasks?" asked a Zentorian officer who had joined their group. "Not exactly trained," Sarah said. "Cats are independent by nature. They choose to live with humans, but they keep their natural instincts." The concept of an animal choosing to associate with another species was foreign to most of the aliens present. In their experience, creatures were either wild, domesticated for work, or kept in captivity for entertainment. The idea of a voluntary partnership based on mutual benefit seemed almost impossible. As they approached the diplomatic quarters, Whiskers suddenly stopped walking. His ears swiveled forward and his pupils expanded. Sarah noticed immediately and looked around to see what had caught his attention. "What is wrong with your creature?" asked the administrator. "He senses something," Sarah said quietly. "Cats have very sharp senses. They can detect things that humans cannot." Down the corridor, an alien worker was pushing a cart loaded with cleaning supplies. To everyone else, it seemed perfectly normal. But Whiskers had caught the scent of blood and violence that clung to equipment used in the arena levels. The smell was faint and old, masked by chemical cleaners, but the cat's nose could detect it easily. After a moment, Whiskers relaxed and continued walking. Sarah made a mental note of his reaction, but said nothing to the aliens around them. They were given comfortable quarters on one of the station's diplomatic levels. The rooms were designed for human-sized beings with furniture that Sarah could use comfortably. Whiskers immediately began exploring the space, checking every corner and crevice with typical feline thoroughness. "We have prepared a welcome dinner for tomorrow evening," the administrator informed Sarah. "Several important officials wish to meet you and learn about human culture." "That sounds wonderful," Sarah replied. "I'm looking forward to sharing what I can about Earth and its people." After the aliens left, Sarah sat down in a comfortable chair and watched Whiskers complete his inspection of their temporary home. The cat eventually settled on a soft cushion near the window, where he could observe the activity in the corridor outside. "Well, Whiskers," Sarah said quietly, "we made it this far. Now we need to learn more about this place." The cat looked at her with those bright green eyes as if he understood perfectly. In many ways, he probably did. Cats were excellent at reading human emotions and intentions. Whiskers had been Sarah's companion for 3 years, and they had developed the kind of bond that only comes from complete trust and understanding. Sarah activated her personal computer and began researching everything she could find about Korthak. Prime. Public information was limited, but she slowly pieced together the station's history and purpose. When she found references to the arena and its deadly champion, she stopped reading and looked over at Whiskers. The cat was still watching the corridor, but his ears were turned toward her. He always seemed to know when something important was happening. "Tomorrow we start asking questions," Sarah told him, "and I have a feeling we're going to find exactly what we came here looking for." Outside their window, the lights of Korthak Prime stretched away into the darkness of space. Somewhere in the station, a crystal creature waited in its chamber, unaware that its next challenge had already arrived. The dinner party was everything Sarah had expected from a diplomatic gathering. Alien officials in their finest clothing made polite conversation, while servers brought course after course of exotic foods. Most of the dishes were safe for human consumption, though Sarah stuck to simple items she could identify. Whiskers had been offered his own small plate of what the Korthaks called premium protein cubes. He sniffed them politely but showed no interest in eating. Sarah had brought his regular food, which seemed to puzzle their hosts even more. "Your companion is very particular about food," observed Administrator Vex Thule, a tall Korthak with purple skin and 3 eyes. "Cats know what they like," Sarah replied, scratching behind Whiskers' ears. "They don't change their minds easily." The conversation flowed through the usual diplomatic topics: trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, and mutual cooperation between species. Sarah answered questions about Earth and human society while learning about Korthak, customs and history. It was during the third course that someone mentioned the arena. "You should visit our famous Arena of Champions while you are here," suggested General Korak, a military officer whose scarred hide spoke of many battles. "It is one of the greatest spectacles in this sector of the galaxy." "What kind of arena?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. "Combat arena," Vex Thule explained with obvious pride. "We host the finest warriors from across the galaxy. They come to test their skills against our champion. And your champion wins these fights?" The aliens exchanged glances. Several of them smiled, showing teeth that were far too sharp. "The Valdris has never been defeated," General Korak said. 847 victories without a single loss. "It is the most perfect fighting creature ever discovered." Sarah set down her fork and looked interested. "That's quite impressive. What makes this Valdris so unbeatable?" For the next hour, the aliens eagerly described their champion. They talked about its crystal body, its razor claws, and its ability to read minds. They showed her recordings of previous battles, though they warned her that the violence might be disturbing to someone from a peaceful species like humanity. Sarah watched the recordings with calm attention. The Valdris was indeed impressive, fast, strong, and apparently very intelligent. But she was not watching the crystal creature. She was studying how it moved, how it attacked, and most importantly, how it reacted to different types of opponents. Beside her, Whiskers seemed to be paying attention to the recordings as well. His green eyes tracked the movement on the screen with the same focus he used to watch birds outside windows back on Earth. "Fascinating," Sarah said when the recordings ended. "Your champion is clearly a remarkable fighter." "Indeed," Vex Thule agreed, "though we face a small problem now. Word of the Valdris has spread so widely that we can no longer find worthy challengers. Most warrior species refuse to send their champions to face certain death. That must be frustrating for your entertainment industry." "Very much so. The crowds still come hoping to see a good fight, but the battles end too quickly. We need someone willing to face the Valdris who might actually provide a challenge." Sarah appeared to think about this for a moment. Then she said something that made every alien at the table stop eating. "I would like to enter Whiskers in your arena." The silence stretched for several seconds. Then General Korak began to laugh. Soon the entire table was making various noises that Sarah assumed were expressions of amusement. "Your small companion," Vex Thule managed to say between what sounded like chuckles. "Against the Valdris?" "Yes," Sarah said calmly. "I think it would be an interesting match." "But your creature weighs perhaps 10 pounds, the general protested. "The Valdris stands 12 feet tall and has 6 arms ending in crystal claws. It would be over in seconds." "Maybe," Sarah agreed. "But I think you might be surprised." The aliens looked at each other uncertainly. The human seemed completely serious about this ridiculous suggestion. They looked down at the small furry creature sitting quietly beside Sarah's chair. Whiskers was cleaning his front paw with his tongue, apparently unaware of the conversation happening around him. "I do not think you understand what you are suggesting," Vexthul said carefully. "The Valdris is not just large and strong. It can read minds, predict attacks, and move faster than most beings can follow. Your pet would be killed before it could take a single step." "Cats are faster than you might think," Sarah replied, "and they have some unusual abilities that other species often underestimate." She began to explain things about cats that the aliens had never considered. How evolution had shaped them into perfect predators. How their reflexes worked faster than conscious thought. How they could move in complete silence and strike with deadly precision. "But it is so small," General Korak repeated. "Size isn't everything in a fight," Sarah said. "On Earth, cats regularly hunt creatures much larger than themselves. They're ambush predators with excellent timing and incredible accuracy." The aliens seemed intrigued despite their doubts. The idea was so strange, so completely unexpected, that it had a certain appeal. And if the human was foolish enough to sacrifice her pet for their entertainment, who were they to refuse? "The arena officials would need to approve such a match," Vexthul said slowly. "And there would be substantial betting against your companion." "I understand the risks," Sarah replied, "but I have confidence in Whiskers." At the mention of his name, the cat looked up from grooming and fixed Sarah with those bright green eyes. For just a moment something seemed to pass between them, an understanding that went deeper than words. "Very well," the administrator decided. "I will speak to the arena management. If they agree and if you sign all the appropriate legal documents, we will arrange a match." "Excellent," Sarah said with a smile. "When could this happen?" "Tomorrow afternoon if the paperwork can be completed in time." The crowds would certainly be interested in such an unusual challenger. As the dinner party continued, word began to spread through the station. The human diplomat wanted to enter her tiny pet in the arena against the undefeated Valdris. Most aliens who heard the news assumed it was some kind of joke or misunderstanding. But in the arena management offices, officials saw something else entirely. A spectacle unlike anything they had offered before. The ultimate mismatch between the galaxy's most feared fighting creature and a harmless house pet from an insignificant world. The betting odds would be astronomical. The crowds would come just to witness such a bizarre event, and when it was over in seconds, they would have a new story to tell about the Valdris's dominance. None of them considered the possibility that they might be wrong about the outcome. Back in their quarters that night, Sarah sat with Whiskers on her lap, gently stroking his fur. The cat purred softly, a sound that vibrated through his small body. "Tomorrow we show them what a real predator looks like," she whispered to him. Whiskers purred louder and kneaded his claws against her leg. If he was nervous about facing a 12-foot crystal monster, he showed no sign of it. He was, after all, a cat, and cats had been the perfect killing machines long before humans ever dreamed of traveling to the stars. The arena had never seen crowds like this. Every seat was filled, and overflow viewers watched from standing areas around the upper levels. Word had spread across the galaxy overnight through communication networks and betting channels. Everyone wanted to see the most absurd mismatch in fighting history. The betting was indeed astronomical, just as the arena officials had predicted. The odds against Whiskers were so high that most gambling systems could barely calculate them. A few humans from other parts of the galaxy had placed small bets on their species' representative, more out of loyalty than any real hope of victory. In the preparation areas beneath the arena, Sarah checked Whiskers one final time. The cat seemed completely relaxed, sitting calmly in his travel carrier and watching the activity around him with mild interest. He had eaten his regular breakfast and groomed himself thoroughly, as if this were just another ordinary day. "Are you certain about this?" asked Dr. Wren, the arena's chief medical officer. "Once the match begins, we cannot guarantee your companion's safety. The Valdris shows no mercy to any opponent." "I understand," Sarah replied. "Whiskers knows what he's doing." The medical team had prepared emergency equipment, though they expected to need body removal services more than medical treatment. Several alien officials had tried to talk Sarah out of the match right up until the last minute. They seemed genuinely concerned about the senseless death of her pet. Above them, the arena's announcement system crackled to life. The voice of the arena's master of ceremonies echoed through the vast space, building excitement for the upcoming spectacle. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all descriptions, the announcer called out in the common galactic language. Today we present the most unusual challenge in arena history. Facing our undefeated champion, the mighty Valdris, we have a challenger from the distant world of Earth. The crowd's noise grew louder as images of Whiskers appeared on the arena's massive viewing screens. Laughter and disbelief rippled through the stands. This small creature, called a cat by its human companion, weighs 10 pounds and stands 12 inches tall. It has no weapons, no armor, and no special training for combat. Yet its human believes it can defeat our crystal champion. More laughter from the crowd, mixed with a few angry shouts from beings who felt their intelligence was being insulted by such an obvious mismatch. In the arena's depths, the Valdris waited in its entry chamber. The crystal creature could sense the emotions of the crowd above: excitement, anticipation, and overwhelming certainty about the match's outcome. But the Valdris also sensed something else, something that confused its alien mind. The small challenger showed no fear. Where every previous opponent had radiated terror and anxiety, this tiny creature felt calm, almost bored. The Valdris had never encountered anything like it. "Challenger, prepare for entry," announced a voice over the chamber's communication system. Sarah opened Whisker's carrier. The cat stepped out and stretched, arching his back and extending his claws briefly before retracting them. He looked up at Sarah with those bright green eyes. "Remember what I taught you about the big ones back home," she said softly. "Fast, precise, and don't let them grab you." Whiskers purred once and rubbed against her leg. Then he walked calmly toward the arena entrance, his tail held high in the confident posture that cats used when they owned their territory. The arena floor was a circle of polished metal surrounded by high walls. Viewing areas rose in tiers around the fighting space, packed with aliens from dozens of species. Bright lights eliminated all shadows, and the floor was marked with a grid pattern that helped spectators judge distances. When Whiskers entered the arena, the crowd's noise reached deafening levels. The tiny orange and white figure looked impossibly small on the vast fighting floor. He walked to the center of the space and sat down, beginning to groom one paw as if he had all the time in the world. On the opposite side of the arena, massive doors began to open with a grinding sound of heavy machinery. The crowd fell silent as they waited for their champion to appear. The Valdris emerged from the shadows like a living nightmare. Its crystalline body caught the arena lights and threw rainbow patterns across the walls. 12 feet of deadly perfection moved with fluid grace toward the center of the fighting space. Each of its 6 arms ended in claws that could slice through military-grade armor. The creature's mental abilities reached out automatically, searching for its opponent's thoughts. It expected to find the usual mixture of fear and desperate courage that filled most challengers' minds. Instead, it found something that made no sense. The small furry creature was thinking about a sunny spot near a window back on Earth. It was remembering the taste of a particularly good fish dinner. It was planning to take a nap after this minor interruption to its day was finished. There was no fear, no desperation, no battle plans or fighting strategies, just the casual, supremely confident thoughts of a predator that had never doubted its ability to kill anything that threatened it. The Valdris stopped walking. This was wrong. This was not how opponents were supposed to think. Whiskers finished grooming his paw and looked up at the crystal creature. His pupils expanded to take in every detail of his opponent, the way it moved, where its joints connected, how its weight was distributed. Information gathered and processed in milliseconds by a brain that evolution had designed for one purpose: killing. The crowd held its breath as the two fighters faced each other. The size difference was so extreme that it looked like a toy confronting a mountain. Then the Valdris moved. The crystal creature lunged forward with speed that had overwhelmed hundreds of previous challengers. Its claws swept through the air where the small challenger had been sitting just an instant before. But Whiskers was no longer there. The cat moved like liquid lightning, flowing around the attack with impossible grace. His muscles, compressed into that small frame, exploded with power that seemed to defy physics. He was already behind the Valdris before the creature realized its strike had missed. The crowd erupted in confusion. Several aliens stood up from their seats, unable to believe what they were seeing. The small creature had simply vanished and reappeared like magic. The Valdris spun around, all 6 arms sweeping through the space where its opponent should have been. Again, it found nothing but air. The cat was already moving, flowing around obstacles that existed only in its own perfect understanding of motion and timing. For the first time in its fighting career, the Valdris felt something it had never experienced before: uncertainty. The crystal creature tried to read its opponent's mind again, searching for clues about where the next attack would come from, but the cat's thoughts remained infuriatingly calm and focused. There were no complex battle plans to predict, no emotional responses to exploit, just pure instinctive hunting behavior that operated below the level of conscious thought. Whiskers moved in a wide circle around the Valdris, his paws making absolutely no sound on the metal floor. His green eyes tracked every movement of the crystal creature's body, looking for the perfect moment to strike. The moment came when the Valdris tried to anticipate the cat's position and moved to block what it thought would be the next attack. For just an instant, the creature's weight shifted forward, leaving one of its rear legs extended and vulnerable. Whiskers struck. The cat launched himself through the air with precision that would have impressed a missile guidance system. His claws extended to their full length as he targeted the weakest point of the Valdris's crystal structure. The thin connection where the leg joint met the body, the sound of crystal cracking echoed through the silent arena like breaking glass. The crack in the Valdris's leg spread like a lightning bolt through crystal. The creature staggered, its perfect balance destroyed by damage it had never experienced before. Purple fluid that served as its blood began to seep from the fracture lines. The arena remained completely silent. 30,000 beings watched in stunned disbelief as their undefeated champion took its first real wound in hundreds of battles. Whiskers landed softly on the arena floor and immediately moved away from the Valdris, staying low and keeping his distance. He had learned from hunting much smaller prey that a wounded animal was often more dangerous than a healthy one. His instincts told him to wait, watch, and strike again when the moment was right. The Valdris turned toward the small creature, its mental abilities finally recognizing what it faced. This was not a warrior or a soldier. This was something far more dangerous, a pure predator that had been shaped by millions of years of evolution into a perfect killing machine. The crystal creature tried to compensate for its damaged leg, but the injury affected its entire movement pattern. It could no longer move with the fluid grace that had overwhelmed so many previous opponents. Each step sent fresh cracks through the damaged limb. In the viewing areas, alien officials began to realize they might be witnessing something impossible. The human's tiny companion was not just surviving against the Valdris, it was winning. How is this possible? Administrator Vexthul whispered to General Korek. I do not know, the military officer replied, his 3 eyes fixed on the arena floor. Our champion has never been injured before. Down in the medical preparation area, Sarah watched the fight on a viewing screen with calm satisfaction. She had studied recordings of the Valdris for hours, looking for weaknesses that trained warriors had missed. The creature was indeed fast and strong, but it fought like a machine, predictable patterns that could be exploited by something that understood real hunting. The Valdris tried another attack, sweeping all 6 arms in a coordinated pattern, designed to cover every possible escape route. But Whiskers had already identified the flaw in this strategy. The creature's attacks were too complex, too planned. They took time to set up and execute. The cat simply dropped flat against the floor and let the claws pass over him. Then he sprang upward, targeting another weak point in the Valdris's crystalline structure. This time his claws found the joint where one of the creature's middle arms connected to its torso. Crystal shattered under precise pressure applied at exactly the right angle. The arm fell to the arena floor with a sound like breaking glass. Now the crowd found its voice. Roars of shock and disbelief echoed through the arena. Beings who had bet their fortunes on the Valdris began to panic. Others cheered for what might be the greatest upset in galactic history. The Valdris was no longer the perfect fighting machine it had been minutes before. Pain clouded its mental abilities. Confusion replaced the confidence that had carried it through nearly 850 victories. For the first time since its capture, the creature felt something that might have been fear. Whiskers continued his patient, methodical hunting. He moved in unpredictable patterns around his wounded opponent, sometimes staying far away, sometimes darting in close to deliver another precise strike. Each attack targeted a different weak point in the crystal structure. The Valdris tried to use its mental abilities to confuse the small predator, projecting images of multiple opponents or trying to cloud the cat's senses with psychic interference. But Whiskers hunted by instinct more than conscious thought. The mental attacks had nothing to grab onto in a mind that operated below the level of rational planning. Another arm fell. Then a section of the creature's backplating cracked and separated. Purple blood flowed more freely now, making the arena floor slippery and dangerous. The Valdris was dying, and it knew it. The creature that had seemed unstoppable was being systematically dismantled by 10 pounds of Earth Predator that had approached the fight like any other hunt. In desperation, the crystal creature tried one final attack. It gathered all its remaining strength and lunged at Whiskers with its last functional arms, hoping to crush the small tormentor through sheer force. But the cat was already moving. He flowed around the clumsy attack with the same liquid grace he had shown from the beginning. The Valdris crashed to the arena floor, its damaged legs unable to support the landing. Whiskers approached the fallen champion with careful steps. The Valdris lay on its side, breathing heavily and leaking purple blood from multiple fractures. Its remaining eyes focused on the small creature that had brought about its downfall. For a moment, predator and prey stared at each other. Then Whiskers did something that confused every alien watching. Instead of delivering a final killing blow, he simply sat down and began grooming his paw. The fight was over. The Valdris could no longer move effectively or pose any threat. In the wild, this would be the moment when the predator would finish its prey. But Whiskers was not wild. He was a house cat who lived with humans and had learned their values. He killed only when necessary for survival or when hunting was required. This had been a demonstration, not a hunt for food. The arena's medical teams rushed onto the fighting floor. They had protocols for treating injured challengers, but they had never expected to treat their champion. Emergency equipment that had been prepared for removing Whiskers' body was instead used to stabilize the dying Valdris. Sarah was allowed onto the arena floor to collect her companion. Whiskers walked calmly to her and allowed himself to be picked up. He seemed completely unaffected by what he had just accomplished, purring softly as Sarah scratched behind his ears. "Well done," she whispered to him. The crowd's reaction was unlike anything the arena had ever experienced. Some aliens cheered wildly for the impossible victory. Others sat in stunned silence trying to process what they had witnessed. A few angry beings demanded their money back from the betting houses, but most of the spectators simply stared at the small orange and white creature in Sarah's arms, finally understanding that they had completely misjudged what they were looking at. Administrator Vex Thule made his way down to the arena floor, his expression mixing awe with concern. "Your companion is remarkable," he said to Sarah. "I have never seen anything like that display of fighting skill." "Whiskers is a good cat," Sarah replied simply. "But what you saw today was nothing special by Earth standards. This is just how cats hunt." The implication of her words sent a chill through every alien within hearing distance. If this level of deadly skill was normal for Earth's house pets, what were the humans themselves capable of? News of the fight spread across the galaxy faster than light could travel between stars. The story grew with each telling, but the basic facts remained the same. Humanity's tiny companion animal had defeated the most feared fighting creature in known space. Diplomatic messages began arriving at Earth within hours. Trade offers, alliance proposals, and very polite requests for more information about human civilization flooded communication channels. Several species that had previously ignored humanity entirely now wanted to establish formal relations. The Korthak Empire immediately granted Sarah full diplomatic immunity and offered her anything she wanted in exchange for keeping the fight. Footage from being distributed too widely. They were too late. Copies had already spread to every corner of the galaxy. Sarah accepted their offer of safe passage and requested only one thing: medical treatment for the Valdris. She explained that on Earth, opponents who had fought well deserved respect even in defeat. 3 days later, Sarah and Whiskers departed Korthak Prime on their small transport ship. Behind them, they left a galaxy that would never again underestimate the humans or their harmless companion animals. In his carrier, Whiskers slept peacefully, dreaming of sunny windows and good fish dinners. He had no idea that he had just become the most famous cat in galactic history. To him, it had just been another day of being exactly what evolution had made him: the perfect predator. The arena still hosted fights, but attendance dropped dramatically. No warrior wanted to risk facing another creature from Earth, and the crowds had lost interest in watching anything less spectacular than what they had already seen. The Valdris eventually recovered from its injuries, though it never fought again. The Korthak Empire retired their former champion to a comfortable habitat where it could live in peace. Sometimes, late at night, the crystal creature would remember the small orange and white predator that had shown it the difference between fighting and hunting. And across the galaxy, humanity's reputation changed forever. They were no longer seen as a minor species of harmless diplomats. They were the people who had convinced death itself to purr in their laps and call it friendship. The arena beast had slaughtered 847 warriors, but when it met a human walking their pet house cat, it learned that some battles are lost before they even begin.